before I even got the notification that my funds had sent, I got the like deposit accepted in my money button. I was like, I didn't even put my phone down. I was like, what? It was the fastest I have ever received a transaction that like I sent. I was just like, I'm a little bit still in awe because that doesn't happen. I'm normally like waiting 20 minutes, checking the blockchain, like, okay, when's the block getting accepted?
Sure.
So outside of
Yeah,
that,
I mean, to go off that, it's funny that you had, you know, kind of a subpar experience with the money button and getting into your Twetch account. We've had a lot of that, you know, with their wallet. We had to bootstrap that originally, and now we have our own wallet. So I encourage you to set that up, and I can help you set that up.
No shit.
But when I first saw a money button transaction happen, I was still, I wouldn't say I was a BTC maximalist still, but I was, you know, just opening my mind to these ideas, right? And I was waiting, you know, hours for confirmation, not for confirmations, but, you know, for enough confirmations to send my BTC or send my ETH and things like that, right? And to see that when the team showed me that, that's when I was all in to go with Twetch, right? Because I knew that we can make this product work, and people would see that and have this, you know, kind of aha moment.
That's really cool. Yeah, I can totally see why. I'm almost jittery because I'm like, holy shit, what have I been missing out on? Like, why have I been paying so much money and waiting so long for? I'm not used to the alternatives, which is funny because all blockchain is alternatives. Anyways,
right, it's all trade-offs, and
yeah,
that's kind of you know, to do a little introduction about myself. I mean, you know, my name's Anthony Karrick, co-founder of Twetch.
Totally missed the introduction.
You know, I
idiot.
Kind of wear many hats there. Past 6 months, you know, CoinEasy, more of the team has been helping out with support due to the BSV and our stack being a little bit just, you know, needing some tune-ups. Otherwise, you know, from day one, I've kind of onboarded and helped everybody with support, and then funneling that to DevOps and prioritizing things that we need to fix for our users. So
yeah, that's awesome.
I kind of came from a, you know, I came from a not traditional background, but I wasn't in crypto until I started this project with CoinEasy and Urban Arson and Non-Dual Randy and, you know, Harry. And I was actually selling NFTs. I didn't know that it was an NFT on Ethereum. This was back like 2018, 2019, even before, you know, we had started Twetch. So that's kind of how they found me.
No, okay.
How we met. So yeah.
So
it's that Urbit project. I don't know if you've messed around with that, but Urbit is on Ethereum. So it was funny they had the same aha moment 2 years ago when I went there to San Francisco, and I had a friend there at Talon, I think you pronounce it. He invited me to present about Twetch, and all these guys that were developing Urbit, they were blown away. But they were kind of secretly believed in the tech after that. But they were still politically BTC maximalists. One being the Bitcoin sign guy. He was there, and he's like, "Oh, I own this and that," but
he's infamous.
You know, it's cool. So that's kind of just a little bit, you know, rambling about my background, how I got involved with Twetch, and what I've done kind of day to day for them for the past couple of years.
That's really cool. I want to hit a little bit more on your background before we move forward to the present and perhaps what the future might look like. But what was your life like before crypto and blockchain, and how, if you don't mind sharing, how'd you get introduced to this idea of crypto decentralized finance? What's that background story like? Did these two industries merge from where you were before, or was it a friend, family, internet research?
Yeah, I mean, the first time I heard about Bitcoin, it was my stepdad. He's a fighter pilot. It was like back in 2015, 2014. He was like hanging out at the crash pad with his commercial airline buddies, and they're like, we should mine Bitcoin. Like it's a way for entropy to be turned into money and vice versa, right? He didn't end up doing it. I didn't end up buying it that time. Kind of went about my life. I was selling software for Esri, mapping software. So like a lot of, my background was, my master's is in geographic information systems and cartography and networks and mapping and things like that, right?
Okay.
And
Like
I was at
GPS software?
Esri.
Like,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah. So everything that goes into that type of information system, which
Okay.
GPS is taking all the GPS would be one way you would collect data to put into a GIS.
Okay.
Was working there and was kind of just unsatisfied, right? Like I was working for this awesome company, making a lot of money, but just didn't feel that I was like building things that were impacting people, right? Like I was delivering this software to businesses, but I was like, maybe there's something different, right? So I was always interested in finance. My grandpa's, he was a banker. And I went in 2016 to the Real World Risk Institute. And it's almost cultish, right? Like they held it in the Masonic Lodge, and now they've held it. The last physical one was where like the Godfather got killed or something in some mobster movie.
Wow, that's insane. No,
But anyways,
I have a
was
little
there
history
with
in like insurance. Do you mean like risk, like assessing risk in the real world, as far as like insuring as to like your house, a car, a plane, a boat?
Sure. So I was just going, to that conference out of pure, intellectual curiosity, right? I had read Nassim and kind of, this was the same time I encountered, this guy, Andrew DeSantis, and he was talking about all these crazy ideas that you do with Bitcoin with respect to data, right? Not just money. And I kind of, after that conference, I thought of it as a hedge to the financial system. So I bought a coin. I bought a BTC coin, and kind of just, I was a BTC maximalist for probably, that was early 2017. And then, early 2018, 2019 is when I started getting involved with the guys from Twetch. So,
No kidding.
I kind of saw that as, oh, it's like they really did take things out of the code that I never knew about when I bought the coin. And, when I saw that things, not being a very technical guy, things like seeing that money button transaction for the first time, I was like, oh, I believe that, this type of system could sustain a business, sustain a profitable business.
Yeah, that's fascinating, and almost, yeah, like the whole point of, I think, where we're at now, watching the industry evolve, is where can we get sustainability, which you need profitability for. You can't sustain yourself if you're not profitable. So it's I definitely think we're seeing a lot of trial and error in crypto here in early 2022 and at the end of 2021, which is so much fun to watch. But I want to expand on that real quick before we move forward. What kind of potential do you think these like decentralized projects have? Cryptocurrencies, alternative currency, like what about it is, you see some longevity here, otherwise you wouldn't invest yourself and your time. So what kind of potential do you think these have? Like, how is this, why should people care?
Sure. I mean, I think that the preservation of things is a very hot topic right now. Basically, part of the reason why we built Twetch was, people were getting censored on Twitter. People that aren't necessarily evil people or have like evil agendas. They just don't agree or don't go say things that the general population or culture, people in power want them to say. So with Twetch, we built essentially a decentralized Twitter. And people can do that on chains like BSV because they can bootstrap a web app to the chain. And,
when you say bootstrap,
I had
do you
my
mean
own,
like hosting the data on the chain? Is that like specifically what that means for? Okay.
Sure. I mean, everything going to the chain, but the interface is, a typical web product, if that makes
So
sense,
the
right?
participant sees no change to the the interface of the web app, but on the back end, it's being immutably stored on a blockchain. Oh,
100%,
that's so
100%.
fascinating.
And, I mean, you've probably like interfaced with marketplaces like OpenSea or, what are the other Magic Eden, things like that,
Hmm.
where things are tough. Even these new chains that are coming out that say they're faster than BSV or more scalable than BSV, they're having trouble. So I do see a lot of you know future preservation of data and memory. I think that people just they want to be sovereign. They don't want to be told what to do.
Right.
Um, and if they have these tools and they have encryption and decryption, which these tools give them that, then we might have a freer society. You're seeing that now with like what's happening in Canada. Not to get political,
Sure.
but they're freezing even Bitcoin payments. So
Whoa, this is news to me.
I
I saw the wire transfer freezes, bank account freezes. I did not know they were freezing
or
actual
or maybe
cryptocurrency
they're
payments.
only freezing the GoFundMe, right?
Okay, okay, yeah.
But it's interesting how, I mean, whoever gets that Bitcoin, they have to off ramp it, right? And there's regulators that can do things there. But they're the I guess the ambition I have and like the excitement I have is that these things will continue to be built, and the doubters will just continue to, oh, like, I will use this, I will give this a try. And even people like that aren't doubting it, like people that are excited about it, like my mom, like she doesn't know how to use Money Button or BSV, but the first time she got on Twetch, she's like, I'm going to Twetch this story, a picture of a story I wrote about you, so it can be preserved forever, right? Like no one can delete it.
Wow.
And so that's the kind of things that really get me excited about these applications
Yeah, that's cool.
and this technology. So
Yeah, that's huge. I can totally see that. I can see your perspective as far as how much potential you think these types of tools and applications have. Especially anything that empowers the individual. I love and is the inspiration for this and learning more, especially about the people who want to help make these tools available for everybody. Can you talk a little bit more
right,
about Twetch and how Twetch is embodying these kind of ideas? And you spoke about how it's censorless too, and or at least decentralized. So I have a question about
sure,
the censorship on Twitter being one of the inspirations for Twetch. A censorless social media is obviously a hot topic, controversial at the minimum. What
sure.
aspects of censorship resistance have been brought into Twitch? Is it censorshipless? Or can you censor? And if you can, like, how would that be applied? And if that's completely inapplicable, what else can you do with Twitch?
Sure, yeah. So, I mean, I'll just address the question of like censorship and stuff. We don't censor anyone. Our terms of service are just, you can't post anything not safe for work. So, if I wouldn't want my child to see it,
Yeah.
then, it's going to be taken off Twitch.
Okay.
And that's something that, I have the power to do, and the
That
guys
was
at
my next
Twitch
question.
do.
So it's not like a
Um,
built-in
and
auto moderating platform where it's automatically taken off. It's humans are removing this content.
sure,
Gotcha. Okay.
Sure, and I mean, we have plans to, upgrade that in the future.
Yeah.
But as far as right now, it's just, contained by us. And if, someone doesn't like it, they can go to another site and the data's there still on the chain that they put. So,
Interesting. Is it still in beta? Is Twitch still? Is it in its alpha release, or where is it as far as the
uh,
release schedule?
Twitch 3, I mean, I would say that it's, our functioning web app. Twetch 2 was more of a beta of our MVP. You know, and we're continuing to kind of explore ideas, right? Like, without giving too much up. We're working on some new things. But really, back to your question about, like, you know, we're giving creators opportunities to make money, right? Like these launches, these NFT launches and things like that, where, you know, people can make money on our platform. And not only celebrities have found that out. Like, I've seen moms who are painters or grandmothers who are like, someone I know bought me a beanie off Twetch from somebody's mom that was knitting, right? Like, there's all of these decentralized ways of trade now that are happening through Twetch, and then we have this /pay function that makes it easier to pay the other side, quickly. So
I didn't really think about that
I'm
when I asked the
excited
question. I guess there's so many.
I'm excited about. Yeah, I'm excited about, I guess, like, Twetch being a foundation, and then, you know, people like, I don't know if you know Josh Hensley. He's a great guy. He's made like a retro. You can go to Retro Twetch, and it's like a pixelated, like, 80s version of Twetch. And, you know, he's just using our SDK. So you can build things, and you can build games with it, and that's what we're trying to do, and we're trying to empower, you know, content creators so that they don't have to bite the bullet, you know, like they have been for so long with the current model.
Taking a knee to pay fees to whatever third party there, whether it be Etsy, Amazon, eBay, whatever, their transactional fees go through Visa, MasterCard, and by the time the transaction happens from someone selling a beanie they knitted, they've lost 10 to 15% of whatever, just trying to get it done. Yeah, I can totally see how this is like, and going to empower people to do this. And I didn't even consider how multifaceted Twetch really is, which kind of answered my question as far as like, what can we do? It's like, you can kind of, it sounds like you can do whatever you'd like. Like, it's up to the content creators to a certain extent.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty limitless in what I've seen. I've been messing around with trying to put location data into it for a while. So
no kidding.
But it's just costly. It's costly to put location data on chain.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. See, you're going right over my head with that. I have a bunch of questions as to why and how, but I fear we would digress. To expand a little bit on this.
Yeah.
What challenges have you faced, like, leading to where you are now, and how have your challenges changed over time since then?
Sure. So I think the biggest challenge was starting without our own wallet, right? We were relying on, for a long time, you know, Money Button, and then Relay came in and really helped us. They had a great team we worked closer with. And then, you know, now we're trying to add other wallets, open to adding hand cash. You know, we have our own wallet now. It's the Twetch wallet. That's what you use with, you know, things like Rare Candy, and we have a wallet. We have that wallet extension now on Firefox and Chrome and Safari that you can download. It's kind of like a Phantom or a MetaMask thing.
Okay.
When Harry came out with that, when Billy and Harry designed that, it was just, you know, to see, and I can't wait for more people to see that and use that, because I think it's really superior to what Money Button has. But we still have all those options, and those were probably, at least I know, I'm not speaking for the entire team, but as far as my role in onboarding and support, a lot of the things were, it's a Money Button issue. How do we get that to Harry and Billy so that we can figure that out? And then are the Money Button devs on this side, you know, communicating? So it's, you know, it's just it's something where in traditional business, where I was like in the office, it's tough collaborating with like a wallet provider that's halfway across the world, or, you know, so you can see where those those problems creep up, right?
Yeah.
You can't get in, then you can't use the app. That discourages people from using it, and reusing it. So
Yeah, interesting. I can definitely
that's
see.
retention has been a huge problem that I'll just be upfront about.
Yeah.
And I haven't found a lot of ways to kind of tighten that up.
Interesting. So these
So we're
challenges,
working on our stack.
yeah, ongoing.
Hmm.
It's fascinating to watch how this evolves. You mentioned earlier working before you got into crypto and blockchain. You mentioned working with Esri and doing the mapping and selling the software, but you mentioned
Hmm.
the impact you were having, and it almost sounded like you were you thought there would be more. You could be more passionate having an impact somewhere else versus the impact you felt like you were having at Esri. So, what type of
Sure.
impact? In what ways would you like to impact this industry in the next 15 years? Like, where do you see yourself down the road in crypto and blockchain as the evolution continues? Where would you love your impact to be?
That's very interesting. I never knew that I never expected that I'd be working on a social media platform because I'm not a very social on the internet guy. Um, I think that over the last year or so, I've been brushing up on my security skills and my networking skills, cybersecurity. And I'd like to see how those three things can intersect in the future. Cybersecurity, spatial networking, and Bitcoin. Specifically a Bitcoin chain. So that's what I'd be. That's what I'll be working on. There's a guy. His name's Joshua Steinman, and he just started a company, Galvanic, um, and I'll be meeting with him on Friday. Just really big brain guy, and he's looking at using the chain to help secure industrial systems against cyber attacks.
No kidding.
Um,
Industrial systems like electric,
and
oil, power grid, things like this. Like,
yes,
wow.
yes. So that's kind of something that I'd like to get into, and I see just being a huge deal. And I just want to protect and use that. Use it. There's this hashtag going around right now. It's Second Amendment for compute, I believe, right?
Hmm.
And it's kind of like what I hit on earlier of we need these tools and these weapons. We need to use them for ourselves, or they're going to be used against us, right? So, it's kind of what you saw in Canada, where they took all the weapons away, and then they can just do whatever they want. Um, Whereas, you can use Bitcoin in a good way,
Yeah, that's true.
and other chains.
Yeah, and that's like totally interesting because a lot of these tools that we have can be used to censor people. While as an open sourced global project, you have the pros of decentralization, no authority, but if the state decides to use the same technology in a different way, all of a sudden it's the most censorable technology that there is currently. As far as
Right.
like some of these actions go.
Exactly.
That's crazy. Well, we talked a little bit about how the challenges have evolved and how you got into the industry. I'm curious, what changes that you've noted in the industry and the landscape of blockchain and cryptocurrency? I know there's been a lot, but since you got into today,
Sure.
what are some of the major changes that you've noticed? And then looking into the future, how do you anticipate these changes to keep coming?
That's a good question.
Whether that be the tech, the wallet, the community, the regulation, where do you find these changes?
Right. So, like we were talking about earlier, with like just logging on to like a traditional website or using a traditional app, like I've seen things get a lot easier from early 2017 when I was like, buying a coin on Coinbase to now. I don't know if Coinbase has gotten any better, but the overall landscape of people trying to do things and then do new things, right? Like I just wasn't even involved. Like I didn't know about NFTs. I didn't know that I was even selling NFTs back in, years ago. And now it's all the rage. And now there's companies like Recur who, um, PJM, a friend of mine who worked at Relay, he's there now. He's the COO of that company, and Recur is going. All these companies now where they are partnering with like the largest licensing company in the world, and they're doing deals with like the NCAA and Disney and all these things, right? So they want to be able to take an NFT off the platform and have royalties and license it. So there's no licensing, no IP. All the IP is good, things like that. So I just think that, again, like that's corporate, right? Like that's them taking over, in a sense. But maybe if we all work together, you know what I mean? And I see that that's usually I'm not into that sort of thing. But I see what Recur is doing is pretty extraordinary going into the future. And things like like a Links DAO. Like I can't afford a golf membership, but maybe I could afford a token that allows me to then have entrance into this golf course, right? That I can go and once a month with my buddies and play golf. So it's weird things like that I've seen crop up, both creativity and just decreasing the amount of friction that people have with the use, would be what I've seen the change.
Yeah, it's interesting.
But I in BSV I haven't seen. It's a pretty immature ecosystem. I'd say across the board, the crypto ecosystem is pretty immature.
Yeah. You mean in the sense of how they're scaling, or the size of it, or just the experience, or the consistency of the members?
Just I'd say more of like just how business gets done, and like just there's so much anonymity that sometimes there's not there's bad actors, right, because of the anonymity.
Yeah.
So it's interesting, right? But I'll leave it at that.
That's a very good point. So the industry is, what, 12, 13 years old, somewhere around there. It sounds like sometimes they may be acting 12 or 13 years old.
Exactly, right. That's a very, very simple way of trying to say what I was trying to say. So.
That's so interesting. Now, another thing we talked about here is how much data is going on chain. For anyone who doesn't know what that means, it simply means instead of your data being stored on an Amazon cloud server or on a server, your Ring doorbells footage that gets stored on a server somewhere else, and you have all this data in all these places, you have no idea where it is. So looking at how Twetch is building on blockchain, literally putting things on chain, so it's an open sourced area. Anybody with internet access can go on and search the chain and find data, their data, other people's data. It's very open sourced in this way. And there's a big debate around this on whether at some point in the future everything will be on chain. What are your thoughts on that? Can you see house deeds, car deeds, regular trade, groceries, like you mentioned, family photos being stored on? Do you see a world that exists entirely on chain, or do you think we'll always have this duality between things that aren't and the important things that are?
Yeah, that's a tough question. Just because I don't know enough technically to know, like, say we were able to store every single piece of data that existed right now on chain. Like if someone had the money for the miners to mine it and put it on chain. But I think that I think that there will always be a duality, right? That's without making a prediction. I think that that's how there will be this limbo or this dance, because it's like if it's not profitable for a miner to keep that in a block, my mom's, picture, right? And she's not paying the miners an incentive to keep that, then, I believe that's what, like, they would prune that
Hmm.
from the chain or from the block, right? And I think that's as deep as I can go
Right.
technically.
Like the miners will choose to mine data that is more profitable to them.
Correct. Correct. Yeah. And again, like that doesn't answer your question of like house deeds and stuff like that. Cause
Right.
my dad's a realtor. He's been a realtor since was 18, and he thinks crypto is a scam, and he thinks, there'll never be smart contracts that will take over just,
Hmm.
e-sign, e-signature, the way we've been doing it, you
Right.
know, forever, except just an e-signature. But anyways, like
It's
that's kind of where
interesting.
I'm at.
I never really thought about that because, well, I'm awfully young. I'm 25. Sometimes I feel a bit older. Sometimes I feel a bit younger. But credit cards have been around for as long as I can remember. I've never had this internal justification of someone trying to sell me a credit card as if, trust me, these credit cards will be the future. This is all you're. It's just a swipe. No more cash. You won't have to carry it. No more coins. It won't be heavy. You just keep the. I'd be like, dude, this is
Right.
this is a scam. This is a scam. Um, but
Yes,
that's
and that's where you have I think, I don't know, I cut you off, but
no,
are you
yeah.
getting at the generational,
Yeah, of like
that,
having this new technology come in to replace something is definitely there are traits of a scheme at play.
yeah.
And I think a lot of
And
people see that.
that's where like I see younger people using it. Even, I mean, you're 25, you're younger than me. I see like, 19, 18-year olds using it and building with it like, Harry's a wizard at this code. And that goes back to the excitement of the future of like, we might be running into problems now, but these problems are going to be figured out, and these young bucks coming up are still going to have the fortitude to keep it going.
Right.
So, and then they'll know nothing else other than there's been crypto, right?
Right.
Just like
Yeah.
your credit card, you've
It's
that's
just
the same thing with me. Like,
I didn't
I
question
never
it. It was
thought about that
here.
either. Right, but we were born into this world with credit cards
Yeah, and yeah, I
and
swipe them.
options. And
Yeah. Wow, that's so wild. I just, yeah, I don't really put things in that perspective too often. And now that I think about it, it's like I would totally be convinced that this was a racket and a scheme. But one thing that growing up has shown me is that also like having some sales jobs, and I have been involved with some unknowingly at first to a pyramid scheme, and I've seen Ponzi schemes come around in crypto, and the bad actors, like you mentioned, the anonymity that the industry allows for, because so much
sure.
growth happens in anonymity. You also have like bad actors, the percent of the pie that comes in and appears to be working in everybody's benefit and ends up rug pulling a project or stealing a bunch of funds, and there's no one to hold accountable. There's no consequences. So there's definitely a
Right.
scary element there, especially it's digital. There's no one across the counter that you can say, you screwed me. It's like, I screwed myself, and that's a hard pill to swallow. um,
Right.
but outside
Right.
of
And
all that,
that's where I was going with, like at Esri, if, one of our partners did that, or if one of our um, competitors did that, there would be legal
there's
repercussions
consequences.
for
Yeah.
that. Yeah, there's consequences. So just, there will be, I think that maturity, people will just have to learn the hard way, like I do most of the time, of you know getting slapped on the wrist or worse,
Hmm.
and then that'll turn around. So
Yeah, I agree. I agree too. I was skeptical at first hearing about cryptocurrency. I did, having just read the drug money laundering headlines, and it's a very
sure.
easy thing to become disincentivized to trying.
And I mean, there's also some of the most extremely intelligent people in the world that I've ever met have been through crypto, like Mark Wilcox and the entire Twetch team. And that goes for pretty much everybody, yourself, that I've met peripherally through this whole experience. So I mean, look at me, I got a mullet right now.
Yeah, it's awesome, dude. I
um,
love the mullet. Keep it, man.
Definitely, definitely.
Yeah, that's one of the things that attracts me to the industry
I
too.
cut you off.
No, you're fine. When I started researching and getting in, I realized like crypto is its own sector, it's its own industry, but in a macro lens, it really is the intersection where all of these other industries and sectors meet. Kind of like how you need finance for trucking, computing, sports. It really is the intersection of it all. And one thing I noticed is it was pulling this insane, brilliant talent from other industries, and regardless of like my scam ringer going off in my head, being like, this is a racket, I'm like, but why are these people who I look up to outside of crypto dipping their fingers in it? There was something that I realized I was missing something. And the further I looked into it, I realized, it's just a tool. Tools get bad raps all the time. People try banning tools left and right. Your weapons, a gun, a knife, a car, things you cook with in the kitchen, things you use at your desk. Our world is made up of these tools, and of course they can be used for evil. It's up to the user.
Right.
And that was one of the things I noticed, this talent coming in. I'm like, why would they open themselves up to this threat? And then I realized it's not a threat. I'm missing information. I'm looking at this compartmentalized in a very small picture of the pie, and all I saw was the headlines of drug dealing and laundering, and without looking at the full scope, I didn't realize that was just a crumb. It's like almost not mentionable to the entire scope of what's happening in the industry. So that was just,
I'd agree.
That was just me and when I was growing. But I want to get back to you co-founding Twetch and your role at the company and how your role in crypto has changed over the years. And I'm really curious, what is an average day of work like for you? What do you find yourself doing from wake up to logging off, time to get to with the family and get like how do you work? It's so remote and it's so non-traditional, this whole crypto world. So how would you explain to someone who's works at the bank from 9 to 5?
Yeah, I mean, it's a lot of, just talking to people, right? Like seeing how things are going.
Like users or other business owners or?
Yeah, a lot of users. So a lot of users will just communicate through certain channels we've set up, through the Twitter, through Discord, we had for a long time a Slack, and we outgrew the Slack for free. So we had to make it was Mattermost we had for a while. So, it's always changing. The channels that we are, that I'm in communicating with, and then relaying that back to Billy and Harry so that they can work on what's broken. Because a lot of times, I'll just send them, I'll gather information like what device are you on, what are you running, what browser, what's the token ID, and then Harry's a magician. He can take all that together and unfuck it basically. So, that's my, I'm basically the grunt, right, of just aggregating all that information, talking to people. If there's an idea, gosh, when I went out, it's been 2+ years now. Just going out and giving that talk, Twetch to Talon and the Urbit guys. Josh invited me out to the Bitcoin meetup there in San Francisco. Gave a talk there. Just things like that, and then trying to empower people to use the Twetch SDK and build on Twetch, right? Because there's a lot of people that are discovering it, and then they're like, well, how can I make my own thing? And Twetch and the Twetch SDK is already to make it a little bit easier for people like me who aren't as technical, and you don't have to bootstrap like a whole application. There's kind of this, it acts as an intermediary for you.
Interesting. I want to expand on that a little bit. It sounds like you do a lot of interacting with the users of this business that you guys have built here in such a short amount of time. And that's a super important thing for business to do, is to interact with its users, learn what's working, what's not working, and disseminate that information. So is this your average day is like this every single day? You're just talking to the user base and kind of plug in and play where information needs to go?
Sure.
Very cool.
That's pretty much what I do. And I do other things to keep the family fed. But that's what I do for Twetch. So
That's really cool. You mentioned the Twetch SDK. Now, I'm probably gonna sound like you're like grandmother or something. Your mother. What is an SDK and how? What? Like why does that matter that people are working with the Twetch SDK? What is an SDK? What can you do with it? And how is this? Why are people excited about this?
yeah. So basically, I didn't know what an SDK was until like a couple years ago. But software developers kit, right? It's like an API,
Okay.
application programming interface. Like
Bunch of
it's
tools.
essentially it's essentially a tool, right? That someone could use, and then they could write their own functions to either grab stuff from the chain, grab stuff from Twetch, post to Twetch, pull from Twetch. They can leverage the way that we're crawling the blockchain, things like that. They can customize it. So, with Josh Hensley, like that was the greatest example that I could just think of off the top of my head. But essentially, you can go on there and, Twetch makes a little bit of money from that, and he makes money from that, and the people posting on that make money, and everybody wins. So that's what people are, that's why people are excited, because they're like, well, I could stand up my I could stand up like a website with my business, or why don't I just like hook it up to Twetch with the SDK? And then you have, you can explore the functions that we have, like /pay and /troll, and it might not even be in a like a social media environment.
Right. That's interesting. I've never even again, not understanding these tools, like having such a poor understanding. it's hard for me to envision the full scope of what's potentially possible using these tools.
Right.
It's so cool.
Yeah, like a friend and I, we made a Donald Trump bot.
Okay. What did it do?
Back, it just took so it just used the SDK, the Twetch SDK, and it basically read Trump's tweets and then essentially Twetched it. And we would just keep the wallet filled so that it had enough to Twetch.
No kidding. That's really cool. I see.
So you can, do really simple things, or you can do really complex things with it.
Yeah. It's interesting. Again, it's a tool. It depends how you use it, huh? So, speaking of these tools, let's say we skip forward here.
Yeah, right. You could use it to build something. Oh, sorry, you cut off for a little bit. It was like some delay.
Yeah, I think
we're good now, though, I think.
Okay. Cool. Fantastic. Yeah, I got a quick hiccup.
Sorry about that.
No. It's probably my internet. I got a lot going on here. But I wanted to skip forward in our timeline here, looking into the future, way after you are gone, I'm gone. Perhaps your kids here, perhaps our kids' are like, who's to say? After so much time has passed, do you think the effect of blockchain and cryptocurrencies, will they be around? And if they are, do you think it'll be like a positive or a negative for people around the world? I guess what I'm asking is the effort and time we're putting in now to build these products, are they going to have a sustainable impact over time? Or, like we mentioned, how a state can use these tools to censor its own dissenting opposition. Do you think we'll see a world of this? How do you see these things impacting the world, I suppose, after a bunch of time has passed? Or will we not even have any of it? We'll not be here. Perhaps supercomputing creates a new type of cryptocurrency that breaks open our whole industry. I have no idea.
Right. I think it'll be around. But after I'm gone, I think that it'll just continue to grow, continue to get, crazier, whatever that, on the good spectrum and the bad spectrum. It'll start to either, look like heaven or a metaverse hell. And you can choose. But again, like it's definitely going places when you have governments that are using it and, trying to get us to not use it.
Yeah.
So if there is any time where there's a scare, it's, the next 10, 50 years, right? If we get through that, then I think it's going to it's going to be around for a long time because, again, like to go back, I don't agree with everything Taleb says, but he has this thing that he like rediscovered, and he calls it the Lindy effect, and it's essentially like we've had these tools, these forks, right, for thousands of years, and there's no fork that came along that, or no tool that could replace the fork, right? So essentially, what I'm saying is we've had coins and cash and physical things for so long, and this technology is very fragile, and maybe it could go away. But the longer it's around, Riley, the longer it's going to be around. So that's, and if you look at time, that's pretty accurate. So
yeah, for sure.
that would just be my statement on that.
Cool.
I don't have any predictions, but I think it'll be around because there's men and women who are building things, and have not just faith in it, but skin in the game and financial, wagers, that they're going to keep on building and not give up easily. So.
Yeah, I think that's a very holistic and relative perspective on where we might head. And I would have to agree with you myself, absolutely. I don't want this to go on for all day. I know you have so much to build and work on, but I absolutely love talking to you.
I got the whole day open, man. I got
right.
like a meeting at 10:30, and that's about it. So.
Well, I'll skip around here real quick. I want to ask you some more questions just about you, about Anthony Karrick. It's so fun learning about Twetch, learning about these tools, but the people who are building them, oh my goodness, I'm so fascinated by it.
You were talking about that guy that you had on the podcast he had this company in Russia that was like cracking the, brute forcing and stuff. That was so interesting. The craziest story I could tell you is right before I joined the Twetch team, because of my background and because I hit up Nchain, I had some emails, and then I talked to, I had a voice call like this with Karrick, and I was going to write a paper with him. He wrote a similar paper, I can send it to you, on the topology of BCH network. And he was going to bring me on to basically, I had a node running, and I was going to do some network analysis on BSV for him. And then the Twetch boys hit me up, and I, you know where that decision went.
Mm-hmm.
But that was an interesting, fork in the road for me then, looking back. And as far as like crypto background, that would probably be the craziest story I have to tell.
Yeah, that's wild.
But it's been fun. Like the first day of Twetch, just Billy hitting me up, and I probably onboarded you.
Yeah.
And then getting to meet some of these people is cool. So.
Yeah, absolutely. I remember being onboarded to Twetch. I was so fascinated by the development of this technology, and the use case really is what got me so excited. Who knows where this could go? Let's see. I have to sign up. Why not participate? And one thing I've learned from cryptocurrency is it rewards its participants. So if it's a garbage idea and you like the people who made it, or let's say you think the people who made it are garbage, but it's a great idea, you get rewarded for participating. So whether you try to get into NFTs, or you try Twetch, or you get on a different marketplace, and odds are you will receive some sort of compensation for participating and engaging. So I knew I had to sign up. Who knows where this can go? And another thing that was happening at the time was the heated debate between BTC, BCH, BSV, and I realized there was very polarizing opinions regarding regarding everything around those three coins and those three chains. Myself, I don't like limitations too much, so I hold all forks. I'm like, why pick one? I don't. So I hold them all. I like them all. I think they're all different, and I use them in different ways. But I thought joining Twetch would show me more to these chains and more to the ideas I wanted to be exposed to that and see where it was going. I'm going to branch off. I know there could be a whole conversation there, but a question I ask everybody that I interview is who you think Satoshi Nakamoto might be. If you'd like to pass, go ahead and pass, but following the history of the fork wars and these different chains coming to fruition, I find that the answer to that question is very interesting.
Yeah, that's a. I mean, I haven't been asked that question in a long time.
How do you answer it to yourself?
I don't doubt that it could have been some people that are already gone. I'll make a claim. I don't think it's Craig. That's why I didn't write the paper with him, and that's why I joined Twetch.
Interesting. I also think it's unlikely that it's him.
Yeah. And I could be wrong. Been wrong before.
Absolutely.
But really, I think that, talking to a lot smarter people than myself, I think it might even be hard to explain in our current metaphysical understanding of who presented Bitcoin, who worked on it, who created it. So I'm just gonna say John Nash and maybe a few others, but
I'm gonna have to look this up. I have not heard this answer before.
I don't know.
Interesting. I just came hip to a new theory that is becoming more popular. I'm not sure how, but that it's Sergey from Russia. There was like the Russians, and they were looking at the dualities between Chainlink and Bitcoin and the languages between English and Russian and when things got added, and there's an interesting timeline there.
I'd love to hear more about that.
Yeah.
What can I ask that question to you?
Sure. Wow, I actually haven't been asked this question.
Because before you answer it, I thought it could have been, only a human, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or only something explained by, our current mathematical physical understanding. And then I was talking to Mark Wilcox and Andrew DeSantis, and I kind of started to, they didn't make any concrete statements. Just through talking with them that I'm like more uncertain about it.
Interesting.
So.
I was my answer to who Satoshi Nakamoto might be has changed definitely over the years. I think each time it changes, it gets less and less specific.
Exactly, right.
To make more sense, I realize I actually need less information and less detail, because I'm no detective. I do have some informal training in linguistics and applied linguistics, and I have been fascinated by the name Satoshi Nakamoto for some time. That was the first piece of research I did, and I come to find out that Satoshi Nakamoto breaks down into these multiple definitions and backgrounds of where these words might come from and what they represent. But Satoshi actually comes from Japanese satori, which is the idea of enlightenment, or a period of enlightenment, or something that presents new information that rises the entire ecosystem. And
gotcha, I didn't even know that.
Seeing the parallel between the linguistic old school definition and what's being attempted here as far as creating an alternative currency that banks can't control, and assuming the genesis block of second bailout for banks coming, and understanding the idea of, okay, an alternative is necessary, whether this is it or it's not it, we need one. And then thinking about the satori and could it be financial enlightenment, and it got me thinking, I'm like, okay, there's no way, to me it solidified the idea that there's more than meets the eye. I didn't think it was just one person named Satoshi Nakamoto out there doing this. It became apparent to me that this was extraordinarily well thought out. Definitely years of planning. I don't think this was an overnight impromptu type of thing. One day I smoked a joint way back when, and I started thinking, What if it's not a human? Just like you mentioned, I thought, what's the chances that someone has created an AI that's gone rogue? And of course, you can go off on all sorts of tangents and side channels there of thoughts of what could and couldn't be possible. Ex Machina
Sure.
helped me kind of think about it in that way too. That movie Ex Machina, where the AI goes into the world, and it left me thinking like, holy shit, there actually could be AIs out here among us, and they are in that sense rogue with their own agenda, their own what they'd like to do, and if they can code and create these systems that are better and more efficient than us, then yeah, I could totally see like an alternative, a digital currency coming around that's been made by an AI that's inherently more efficient than anything humans have done prior. And to me, as like
Wow.
as scary and as unsettling as that idea is, I find it more likely than like current answers to who is Satoshi Nakamoto. I'm like, I like Craig
Yeah,
Wright.
right.
Possible, absolutely possible. With all of the information that I have or that I've seen,
Yeah, absolutely possible.
I throw it in the unlikely boat. And it's the
How do we
same thing with
drop?
the rogue AI. I'm like, a rogue AI, it's possible, but I'm gonna throw it in the unlikely just for mental peace so I can sleep at night. I do like the Hal Finney idea. I got hip to that watching a documentary, Banking on Bitcoin, that came out on Netflix years ago, and that really like showed
Yep.
me like the location area of the real Satoshi Nakamoto, the engineering professor who lived 15 minutes from him, or all sorts of these like weird. So, but I've also, a lot of people I've talked to said it's definitely the government. Like they have some, and no one's willing to share the information they have, but it always points to some entity that wants more control. NSA,
Sure.
CIA, and that's the most frightening thought. Truly, to be that like we surrender in search of an alternative currency, that we surrender our financial support to an anonymous project with hard-coded rules that we like cannot change, and it's like that is like where I begin to the human. It's almost too ironic. I think that's the most likely, to be honest. I hate to say it. I believe the most likely is that it is some government or a secret government, some subsidiary government somewhere.
That's interesting.
I
That's
pray.
like
I hope it's not.
that's the most pessimistic thing I've ever heard you say, Riley. So that's interesting.
I'm generally an optimistic guy, but
Right.
I also like Elon
And
Musk.
not
says,
that you're being a Debbie Downer. I just that's I hadn't thought about that either before.
the
It's dark.
implications of it are just so large and so frightening that I can't
So dark.
I can't write it off. The fact that let's say it makes it, let's say Bitcoin gets accepted worldwide and all these systems get built on it, all these deeds, and then all of a sudden we find out the whole thing was bad actor from the start. And oh my god, I can like feel it in my guts, like almost it's disgusting.
Oh, you're making me feel it.
I really hope it's not. But yeah, I don't think we'll ever be. I also like the whole everybody is Satoshi Nakamoto because it's.
Right.
I like that, and I believe it is up to the participants and the users as to who controls where this goes. The idea that this whole Bitcoin is democratic, in the sense of majority rules, 51%, whenever we vote is where the consensus heads. It's a give and take. It's a pro and con. It's a bug and a feature, right? Because for the minority, there will always be upset, but for the majority will always, in theory, get their way. That also leads to all these fork wars we've had and all these which is why I hold every fork, is because I enjoy every narrative. I'm so inconclusive. I have a hard time pointing a finger. But I digress. I've gone way too long answering this who is Satoshi Nakamoto question.
No, I appreciate that. Actually, that's an answer I have not heard before.
There's a couple.
I need to think about that more.
There's a couple popular entrepreneurs who have said this before. One I can think of is billionaire Dan Pena, and he's talked about who he believes, and he says he knows for a fact who it is, and if we all knew, we'd be disgusted, and we would sell everything we have, and we would never touch it. And it's not so much that I believe that, but I do believe that's a possibility, and it's something to be cognizant of as we build these tools. And something we mentioned before is how tools that we build us right back. The limitations and the pros and cons that we hardwire into these tools, like they give us pros and cons and limitations, and they give us more options. So I consider all this and where we're headed and which ones of these projects might succeed and what that could mean if we're wrong. It's
right.
And when I think about the aspect of irony and that trait in human existence, I really like what Elon Musk said recently about how he thinks Dogecoin might actually be a world currency one day, because he believes that the most ironic outcome is the most likely. And I have a I have a deep experience with irony in life, and I can't deny it.
Same.
And I think there's something that's absolutely horrifically ironic about Satoshi being a government entity, and coming to find out by the time that the industry market cap will be too large, and too much will be built, where it'll be how can we navigate out of these waters and turn the tide versus how do we quit, because we'll be too deep.
Wow.
But nobody talks about this. I think maybe it's a little scary. I think it also would stop a lot of people. It would quit. People would stop onboarding themselves. That really brings up the whole scam narrative once again. I was like, you can ask Adam Beck, you can ask anybody who's in crypto for as long as they've been in, and like the fact that Satoshi can't be answered. Like, would you ever put your money in a bank where like no one, the bank owner was anonymous, and we had no information on like who ran the bank and where they were, and it's like you'd think like, oh, why would I ever put my money in that? But it's like we've been born into these systems where it's like the IMF controls the policy, and like we get to vote for these, but in the end of the day, they're people who are creating this policy. We don't know them, and we don't know if it's actually backed. Not to mention like the FDIC rules and our dollar not being backed, and how that it's our global reserve currency. So it's like we actually have already done that once, of give our entire financial support to a system that we were born into.
Right. And I mean that's what got me into it. Is I was like, oh, this dollar, this was 2017, right? Like, I was like, this shit's going to crash. Like, the housing market's going to crash. I better buy myself a Bitcoin because it's going to go up, and then I can buy myself a house. And it's not like that. So
yeah, it's super interesting. But the idea, that conceptual like underlying idea, definitely sucked me in as well. Outside of crypto, I want to learn a little bit more about you and what
sure.
What inspires you and what aids your thinking and creative process. But who are some people that you draw inspiration from, living or dead? Who are your, I guess, not idols, but your inspirational figures?
I mean, I'd say that Nassim Taleb has kind of shaped my thought, for better or worse, over the past, since I started college, right? Like, I reread his stuff a lot.
I'm about to start one of his books.
Which one?
I don't know if it's Anti-Fragile. I have it on my dresser. I actually have to pull it up. I got it at a used bookstore. It's the only one.
Anti-Fragile's one.
Okay.
Anti-Fragile is one of his titles, but anyways, he basically is,
I followed him
just
for a
an
long
interesting
time.
Thinker.
He's pessimistic.
And,
that's the thing I can't wrap my head around. He's like
he's very
hardwired.
He's very interesting. And he'll block the hell out of anyone, and if you're not talking about what he wants to talk about or something. But regardless, he shaped my thought a lot about randomness in life, about irony in life, about like things that you're talking about, right? And then he talks about old scientists, and he talks about Claude Shannon and gene theory, and talks about Nash, and talks about the Greeks, talks about how like they these old Greeks like Cicero and Cato. And I went back to them after reading Taleb, and I was like, wow, like they didn't have all this technology, but they had the same problems as me existentially. Mm-hmm. And they had ways and protocols and tools that they would use so that they would stay human, just like we have to, just like I have to. So I guess through him and reading some of the ancients, and reading people like Nietzsche, and being like, okay, I can pick the good out of that and wash away all the bad. Those people have had the most impact on me.
Interesting. Yeah, that's fascinating.
Just those few names. So.
And it's cool that Taleb is alive too, so he's someone you can follow, monitor, engage with, interact, if the cards are in play.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I pursued him in 2016 when I was still a fanboy. I went to his conference, and it was like a 9-day conference. It's mainly for options traders, but I just went and paid my paid my own way, and he gave me a scholarship. So it was only about $3,000. Usually it's about 8 or 9.
That's cool.
So I got to meet him, and it was interesting to talk to him in person.
Yeah, that is fascinating.
That's why I got on Twitter originally.
No kidding.
And then I shortly after following him on Twitter, I somehow found Mark and Andrew.
Wow.
And just the whole Deos clan.
So you're following your passion from some time ago, and it led you to a place that you didn't know you wanted to be. That's so special, because
Exactly.
there's so many people who are stuck in the routine of, I hate it, but I can't get out.
Yeah, no, I'm definitely I don't get stuck, right? Like if I want to go do something else, I'll be very apparent and loud about that. So
Yeah, good for you. Let's I have a couple more here. I would like to flip through, ask you a question.
definitely, man. Yeah, I literally ran out of water. I might go get another water, but
Yeah, no, yeah, go ahead. Actually, I could. I need to
take like 30 seconds.
Yeah.
And then I don't know. I mean, obviously those are famous, smart people, dead people that I mentioned. I am a Christian. That's been a huge part of my life, value-wise, and just really grateful to have a good father, have a good mother, and I got all my grandparents around still, so I know I have a lot to lose. But my grandparents have been huge in my life, of just teaching me those old world values that I think new generations are kind of losing touch with.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, maybe that's one of the reasons I found myself drawn to your interactions on Twitter. Is as new age as I might be, I'm also a bit of a traditionalist myself. I can't help but love tradition and what it represents. It's a human culture. It's like irreplaceable. And part of me thinks that we're headed down a timeline that may or may not be completely rewriting culture as we know it and getting rid of the parts that they find undesirable. And tradition is like, having studied like anthropology and looking at culture like around the world, it's like that's humanity. So for me to see ourselves potentially losing our humanity is what scares me. And I think we are going through a cultural collapse as some of these values leave us and we're adopting new ones. So realizing that the future is up to its participants gives me hope, because it's like, well, if life is what we make it, then it's not necessarily like headed down this path, because we can make it something absolutely beautiful. Kind of reverting back to how you said we can use these tools to live in a type of heaven where individuals are empowered, virtually limitless, and in the types of economies they can engage with, who they can get a loan from, how they can move out of an impoverished area or move into a place that's resource abundant. And
exactly.
It's up to us. I really do believe it's up to us.
I would totally agree.
Question about you. Do you see yourself more as a hunter or a gatherer?
I'm a hunter.
Absolutely.
I mean,
I would agree too.
I've been, before I was at Twetch, all I did was sell. My first job, I kind of got a break because I knew the guy that owned the company. It was a small dermatology company. And he essentially bought these old drugs that GlaxoSmithKline wasn't using anymore, and hired a sales force. And he just gave me the entire state of Arizona as my territory, and he's like, you better get these derms cranking. And I worked my magic and my charm, and then I kind of went back to school because I knew I didn't want to do that. I didn't want to do pharma. Even derm, there was some moral stuff that I was against, and the industry is interesting, but then I moved to Esri and I was selling, and now I'm at a startup and clawing my way to other things as well. So I'd consider myself a hunter.
I would absolutely agree with that. I can tell you're a go-getter.
Thanks, man.
When you said if you're unhappy and looking for more, that you'll make that known. That was like the that's where a bunch of people like they don't do that. Like they all go one way, and then certain people are like, oh whoa, no, if we're gonna do these are conditions for my presence.
Exactly.
Let's see here. When you were a child, what did you want to be when you're older? Have your interests more or less stayed the same, or have they developed as you aged? You get into tech always, or later in life?
So I wanted to be a doctor. I
Like
think that
medical
was
doctor?
like, yeah, I wanted to be a medical doctor. I wanted to care for people because my little brother, I have one little brother, and he got spinal meningitis because we were like playing in the irrigation as young boys. So like I was 4 and he was 2, and then high death rate for that. He almost died. The virus was killed in his pancreas.
Okay.
So the pancreas shut down. He lived, but he lost his pancreas. So he's had type 1 diabetes since then.
Wow.
And that kind of like instilled in me, like, I was like, oh, I want to be a diabetes doctor. I want to cure diabetes. I want to, make it so he doesn't have to prick his finger, fucking 20 times a day. Things like that. So I was very passionate about getting into medicine. And then, when I got to the end of undergrad, I was already thinking about technology. I was already thinking about the burden of medical school, debt-wise, that would put on my family later on. And I was getting to work on some projects in college. It's a weird story. The guy, his name's Jeff Yarger, that I was working for, and we had a project where he put gold nanoparticles in tattoo ink that would bind to the glucose in your blood, and then he would shine an IR laser on it, and based on the spectrum, you would know how much glucose was present.
Wow.
And we were working on that project when I was like junior, senior in undergrad. And he sold he sold the company, right? And he sold it to some incubator in Scottsdale or Phoenix, and they fucking killed the project. So I don't know what happened, but that's where kind of I was like, okay, I want to not be a doctor anymore, because I know if I go to medical school, I don't like debt. That just mentally clouds me.
Mhm.
I got this opportunity to go talk to doctors, meet doctors, see what makes them tick, see what problems they have, right? And that just reinforced that first job, those 2.5, 3 years I was there. I was just talking to dermatologists, making good money, and the PAs and the MPs were happier than the doctors, because they didn't have the big debts, they didn't have the things to worry about, where that was taking away from their time and their empathy of the patients.
Wow.
So I wanted to do that, got into tech. I'm still in tech. I said that I want to work on security for the next 15 years and Bitcoin and, these cryptocurrencies and Twetch. Who knows though? Later on, if I ever hit a lick, maybe I'll go back to medical school.
Yeah.
So.
Wow. I like how you are keeping your future open, and you aren't. Many people I meet, I know, like I said, I'm young, but many people in my age range I talk to are very narrow-minded about they know where their future's going, and don't try to tell them differently. But I find that people have so much more enjoyment out of life when they allow life, or the universe, however you'd like to say it, to play a hand in what you might be doing for humanity and its causes.
100%,
So I
man.
like that. So good for you. That's super important. Don't let go of that. I think that's something we need to keep instilling in our kids and like pass that on, because with horse blinders on, man, you can only get one thing done, and you might think you know what's best for you, but it's so selfish to say that you can understand the macro picture of everything that's going on when like we can't even like come to a full agreement on who we're voting for.
100%.
So
100%.
Absolutely. That's really here.
I appreciate that compliment too.
Oh yeah. Well,
Because
thank
most,
you.
because it's
It's
like,
important.
sometimes my parents are very supportive, but sometimes like, there's other people, right, that are close to me that are not my wife, but that are like, questioning like, what is this? Like I think I told you before, like my brother has grilled me about Twetch before and like,
Mm.
what is this business and how do you guys make money? And, it sounds like a scam. And so it's interesting. I don't know, where to go from there, but it's like, it's, it's an interesting business to be in.
Yeah. Yeah. I could totally get that. One thing that's taught me, like, I'm gonna go back and just expand on the scam comment you made, like going back and realizing, like, I never really questioned credit cards because I like, grew up with them, and I could totally see why someone would question like a cryptocurrency. But one thing that I think cryptocurrency is doing inadvertently is creating a discussion around value. Not only like what is it, how do we define it, but like how do we perceive it? How does that perception change over time? And I think the deeper we get down into this hole, at least for myself, it has showed me that everything is a racket in life. And I used to separate things into this like scam, not a scam, scam, not, and I thought it was like there's a strict line and things are either this or that, and it's like, oh my, learning about how the US dollar is not backed by anything, how it's faith-based, faith-based. I kept saying that to myself, and I come to find out
Yeah.
everything in life is faith-based. Science is faith-based, our money is faith-based, our like all these conceptions we have of the world, it's like everything is a scam unless enough people believe in it, then the idea works and then it's not a scam. Like if BitConnect truly was able to like deliver, it wouldn't have been even though it was completely a pyramid. Like there's so many of the most successful companies that are complete pyramid schemes, complete Ponzi's, but they're not looked at as scams because they're operating and they're not failing.
Sure.
And people are making
Sure.
money. More morality aside, but that really it opened up the idea of value to me, and like, what do we value? Like, why is this $1 worth $1? Like, why do I pay this for my computer? Why do I? And it's like, how does value? How do we value art? And why does that change over time? Why do things appreciate,
Right.
depreciate? Is it the object that's depreciating, or is it the thing I'm valuing it in that's changing in value? Is it my
Sure.
money? It's like it opened up this huge conversation, and I love that because it's this extra dynamic about like, look, cryptocurrency exists, right? I'm a huge believer that Mother Nature doesn't waste time, doesn't waste energy. I don't think
Yeah.
it doesn't, and if it does, those things they come up and they die off, and like that's that, and like never to be heard of
Exactly.
again.
They
And
get filtered out.
existence implies something. That's something I think we're trying to define ourselves. But the fact that it's here tells me, like, okay, there's a reason. There's a reason, like, when you read the Genesis block, oh, second bailout for banks come, like, there is reason, which, that's why I believe that, like, there's more to it. I don't think it's a scam. I believe it's scam-worthy. Sure, will scam artists use it? Of course, it's a tool. Scam
Right.
artists use cars, they use telephones, they use bank accounts. It's never stopped them. But that's just traditionally how we view a scam, instead of this new age, or this new like definition that's forming of like projects that don't deliver but are full of promises. And that is so much
Right.
of crypto because it's in its infancy. So much of it is concept, startup, promises, and ideas.
Yeah.
But that is something that changed my mind. I realized, like, holy shit, the U.S. dollar is a scam. Like, half the
Right.
websites I visited as a child, like, aren't around anymore. Does that mean it's a
Right.
scam? Like, because it didn't work out, because people might have lost money who invested into, like, this website? Is that now a scam? Or
Totally.
was it just trial and error? Like, it's
And
very...
right.
It's very
That goes
finicky.
back, I think, so that goes back to like your Satoshi question of like, I've read like, maybe I've seen, 1,000 things, right, that could confirm that Craig Wright is Satoshi.
Hmm.
But only one observation could like demerit him, right?
Mm.
And we don't have all the information. It's not, it's not like this interface that I can just pull up and have all the information. Life is uncertain. So that's a lot like, the scams.
Yeah.
Like you don't know. Like I don't know if it's hard to articulate that. but what is a scam?
Yeah.
What's not? You know,
It's easier in hindsight looking back at like, oh, it was a disaster. How did we not see that was a scam? It's like in the moment, they're pretty convincing. Oh boy, I have a question for you. I think you say you're not technically oriented, but like I have a landscape company. I move shovels and rakes and dirt and mulch and all the like rocks, and so like
I have landscape.
Yeah, but compared to
I have
you,
mad respect for that.
well, thank you very much. It's not easy. Compared to someone though that understands a little bit of front end work and like user interfaces, like I would say you're technically oriented, even though you wouldn't, probably because you're comparing yourself to someone you consider technically oriented. But
Sure,
like my dad
somewhat
would
of
say,
an imposter syndrome.
Sure.
You know, there's a little bit of an imposter syndrome always.
Yeah,
I
like,
think
my dad would say I'm technically oriented, but like I can like there's things I can hardly do that are like in the web world like completely basic, and I'm like,
right.
Oh my gosh, I'm actually forgetting where I'm headed with this question.
They're all good.
That happens.
I mean, I would say that I never, you know, I don't develop like the front end of Twetch. Very early on, there were some code that I pushed that I had on production.
Okay.
You know, but like I said, like it quickly got away from, you know, my front end stuff and my front end knowledge, being able to then take that and connect that to, you know, a crawler for the chain, or you know, an API that Tal's running, so that we can get our transactions mined, things like that.
Okay.
But I mean, if you want to ask me anything on front end, like I'm just kind of, you know, I'd call myself a beginner. Like Bitping I just did some work for, and it was just basically one of their customers where I was going through HTML and CSS, and kind of converting some of their pug files so that the dashboard worked for their client.
Interesting.
Yeah, so just very low level stuff, and like I said, just I'm more into, you know, getting into the cybersecurity aspect of things. So I don't know if I'll have to go at that a traditional route first.
Yeah.
You know, get into a traditional company first to be able to do something crypto wise. But like I said, be talking to Josh on Friday, and that'll be fun. So
yeah, that's cool. Halfway through, I'm sorry to interrupt. Halfway through your explanation, my question dawned on me, and my goodness, I hate how my brain works sometimes. It's so embarrassing
it's all
when I'm
good.
like start a question that needs a background, and halfway through the background, I totally forget what I'm asking. So
You're fine.
I think a lot
do that
about,
with answers.
Yeah, it's impossible. I think a lot about like this Bitcoin Genesis block, and a lot of people talk about like, oh, because if Satoshi's dead or not, can he sign the keys, and can the coins be moved? And with no technical background, like I have no idea if this is confirmable. I've been told that the 1 million Bitcoins sitting in the Genesis block cannot be moved because of the way that it's coded. Is like they cannot be moved. Like if, let's say, whoever Satoshi was wanted to sell the 1 million coins on an open market sale, like they wouldn't be able to move them or something. So this idea, I don't know how popular it is. I've heard it multiple times from people that I'm not sure know each other. I don't know if I've accepted it. So my question for you is like, do you know anything about this? Can the Bitcoin that are in that Genesis block move? And if they can, what do you think the implications of that would be if we saw all 1 million coins move from one wallet to another? Coins that haven't moved since the start of the chain. Do you know anything about that by chance?
I don't know anything about whether or not they are locked, or, you know, inaccessible or unsignable or unsendable.
Okay.
But as far as, you know, if they were to move, I think that would cause some second order effects, like maybe some sell-offs. I don't know what it would cause.
Overnight uncertainty.
Right, but I don't know exactly. You'll have to send me some of that stuff because I'd love to read on who's made those claims. I don't think that I wouldn't say that they're wrong or right.
Hmm.
I have the only thing that I've read about that is Kurt Wuckert
Yeah,
Jr.
yeah.
He writes a lot about that and just the whole Satoshi trial, the whole Craig Wright trial kind of thing. And I think that he's written on that, and I'm gonna go out on a limb and say that he explains that in some of his writing.
All right, and that's my
You
list
know
here.
why Craig hasn't moved the coins.
Interesting, because I know in as far as
So
specifically in the Craig debate, I know the whole conversation revolved around just sign it. Can you sign it? Can it be signed? Outside of that, I'm wondering, like, can these coins move? Like, until I can answer that
exactly.
question, because like, if they can, and one day they do, let's say the market cap is 15 trillion. The industry's that would be like near like a 5x of where the industry sits today as far as how we'd value the market cap. And then we have a
Right.
million Bitcoin that move in a single transact. Like, that would shut. Like, I think the industry would be in such shock. I don't know what the full implications would be, but I'm gonna add Kurt here into my notes I'm taking on this, and it's something I'm going
Definitely.
to look up.
And I mean, honestly, I'm not setting Kurt up for an interview, but
Sure.
he would be probably someone that you would be very interested in talking to on an
Okay.
interview like this.
I've been
So
following him for some time. I'll have to get a little knee deep into his work here and drum up some interesting questions. But yeah, it sounds like he's very knowledgeable on that.
he's very, very knowledgeable on that topic.
I have one. Actually, I've got two questions for you, and I think we'll wrap it up. One of them just
Heck yeah.
about you. Everybody talks about the moon in crypto. When are we going to the moon? I'm wondering, like, would you personally rather visit the moon in real life, or would you be happier going to like the deepest part of the deepest ocean?
Ooh, deepest part of the deepest ocean. I'm gonna
Yeah.
have to think
Oh,
about
that
that.
scares me. How can you say that?
Well, there's probably monsters down there that would devour me. Like I might not make it back. I just think that like I don't discourage people that are like trying to go other places and like sustain our species for longer on other planets and things like that. I just think there's so much that we haven't explored here still. Um,
It's true. It's a good
Having
answer.
a small mind about it, or but growing up in Arizona, growing up in Arizona, like all I ever saw was desert and cactus, and then I lived in Montana for 2 years where it was the complete opposite. So, in just the way that influenced my brain and my thinking, um, I think that like there's so much more that I would like to see here before I go on a rocket.
Yeah, I agree. It's funny how, like, as a species, we're more apt to explore places we don't live versus our home. So my last question here, super general. I need you to like zoom all the way out. The answer for this is the target audience for this question specifically is someone who's never heard of blockchain and never heard of cryptocurrency until today. If you were going to give the most
Okay.
general advice you could in 30 seconds or something around there for someone just starting to learn, what type of advice would you pass on to someone who hasn't had their mind riddled with false information or naughty headlines from the past? Like, how would you help someone who's getting involved? Or learning?
Sure, sure. I would say don't overbet. Like, don't put too much money in than you can, right? Like, first of all. Second of all, like, expose yourself to as many things as you can. Because I think that I lost out on that in my experience because I was like BTC, 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 stake for so long. And there was all these things, other things going on around me that, I would have, I could have tried and learned from quicker.
Interesting.
And lastly, I'd say to try to be patient with the people who are building it. Be demanding because it's business, but this is so new, and it's very very tough to um, navigate what is a scam and what isn't. But companies like Twetch, like we're here for our users, and we have families to feed. So I guess that's where you try everything, or you try as many things as you can, because some's going to be good and some's going to be bad, and you want to quickly find what's good and going to add value to your life.
I think that's fantastic advice for someone getting in just learning about the space and the potential it has, and what's going on. I think that's definitely a great piece of advice. That's something I would tell my dad. My dad's like, he's a headline kind of guy. He's like, oh, I'll do my research. Let me read a book of headlines, and I should be able to learn everything I can.
Sounds like my dad too.
And then I think his great advice for him is, to trial and error, and don't feel pushed out, and don't stop yourself from learning in every way you can. It's absolutely great advice. Well, that's everything I have here for you for this episode of Building on Blockchain. If you have anything else you'd like to add, I'm going to put a ton of Twetch information into the link of the video.
Cool.
For people who want to learn more about why Anthony Karrick and company have thrown all these ideas together and created a business in this quickly growing space. And I think there's a lot to learn from trial and error, and a lot to learn from these companies that are in these startup stages, these infancy stages, and to see how they're navigating through challenges and issues, and how they're coming up with solutions. It's fascinating, and we are you guys are the pioneers of this whole development. And if everything works out and this takes off, in some 20, 30 years, they're going to be studying the history of how this industry came to be, and they're going to be looking at all of these companies that tried different, and they'll be watching interviews, they'll be reading papers, and they're going to try and wrap their head around how this whole big mess blew up. And that literally comes down to day-to-day activities of people like you, and the company you surround yourself with, and this idea of permanence that we're leaving behind in such an unpermanent world, so fleeting. So for all these things, I appreciate and applaud you for building on blockchain and deciding to devote your time and your energy, your money, resources, everything that you've decided to put into it and that you've traded to further this industry in one way or another, and wherever your path might be headed. It's so fascinating on the outside, and just know that there's a lot more people watching and learning from what's going on than you might know. So keep that in mind as the industry grows, that you're a pioneer. These are we learn about the pioneers learning in modern American history. We look back at who got here, who died first, who got sick, and it's which companies did they make first, who were the first social medias to get on any chain. It's you are the people, and so for that I give you 2 thumbs up. I'm super happy, and
thank you.
Yeah,
thank you.
It's really all I have to add.
I appreciate the encouragement. Thanks for having me on. I learned a lot from you. Hopefully, the listeners can learn some stuff, and head on over to twetch.com if you have any help, or if you need any help. I'm there to help, and
I love it.
Yeah, that's what I would set you off with. So
hell yeah, twetch.com. You'll see me there on Twetch. As the host of ELC, I wish you another good one, and thank you very much, Anthony. It has been an absolute pleasure. I'm so happy we could capture this time and moment here today. It's so important, I think, for where we're headed. This is stuff we'll reflect back on, and I thank you for your time. It's very appreciated.
Definitely, man. Sorry I went a little long.
No, I'm so
ramble.
happy. No.
But thank you, Riley, for your time, and
absolutely.
Again, I was honored to be on and to talk with you and learn from you.
Thanks. Hell yeah. We'll have to do another catch-up video here, and we'll let some time pass and some changes happen and see where this road takes us, and we'll catch back up here in a while.
Sounds good, man.
Cool. Well, thanks again, Anthony, and we'll catch up soon. I will send you over drafts before anything's published, so I can get your thumbs up on any kind of media content that's going to go out related to this.
Sure.
So yeah, I'll get your thumbs up, and we'll go from there.
Awesome, man.
Right
Take care, Riley. Have a good rest of your day.
Thanks. Thank you. You too. Bye.
Bye. Cheers.
My goodness. So like I mentioned earlier, it's been a year. It's been 11 months since I've had the opportunity to film a Building on Blockchain, and boy, do I have so much fun picking the minds and asking questions to these people and the representatives behind some of these companies that are changing the space of blockchain and cryptocurrency, and literally changing it on a technical level as far as what potentially can happen and what users can do, but they're also changing the way that we think about cryptocurrency, and changing the way that we think about blockchain, the way that we think about culture, governance, voting, tokens, and I think in effect it's going to have a very real world consequence where this culture is developing. There's a sense of permanence here, this immutable dream we are all chasing. I think it'll definitely be spilling over into the real world. So thank you for tuning in and watching this and learning with me and with Anthony here today. And I'm so excited for what comes next. What it is, I don't know, but we'll find out. So thank you again. I hope you enjoyed this episode of Building on Blockchain. And maybe I can do a little Twetch how-to or an onboarding, or at least a what is Twetch video. I'll see if I can get that posted shortly after this. But until then, ELC, thanks again. I appreciate your time. Bye.